Adjutant online.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today. That will be Tuesday, StarCraft 2 G Division Coliseum with me, Sebastian Sjöberg, and here we see our champion, LiquidTLO, fighting as the Red Terran here in the lower starting position of Xel'Naga Caverns versus the German Brotoss menace mouzHazu, also known as HazuObs, who impressed us all so much in his recent run in the recently concluded Team Liquid Star League number 3, where he reached very far, took out many well-known opponents on the way, and truly showed his might as a Brotoss player from Europe. And I do believe this is not a ladder match. You can see that from the colors. It is a BattleNet game of some sort, surely part of some epic tournament that we all should follow intently. But no matter what, these players will provide a unique and entertaining game. TLO is of course the creationist when it comes to StarCraft 2 and how to do things in an unorthodox way that always captures our hearts and our minds, and sometimes takes him very far up the leagues. Also, he has been known to be overly creative and perhaps lose games that he could have won had he played more conventionally, but that is just not his style. He does things his way, and that is the different way, and it is always entertaining and always educational. Not everyone can mimic it or do it, but we should all look at TLO and grasp into the future. In either case, he will definitely do. He will have to do his best to defeat HazuObs, who's a very well-rounded player, quite aggressive and surgical in his way, I must say. A refined Brotoss player, perhaps not as refined as, say, LiquidTLO, but definitely very versatile and adept. Here, putting down his first gateway, which was now followed by a cybernetic score. We'll see what TLO is up to here, because that is always what you want to keep looking for. One Marine out and then immediately tech lab. Now I do suspect we'll see a Reaper out of him. He simply loves his Reapers, and it allows that early game harass ability as well as scouting. Question is, what does he do after that? Does he follow that up with more barracks, a factory, or a fast expand? We shall see, and here comes the Reaper as clockwork. Interesting. TLO, of course, has recently moved to Stockholm. He's of course from Germany, Leipzig, but is nowadays living in Sweden and working as a pro gamer in Sweden, having established a pro gaming house based on the Korean model, but in a quite different take and a fairly unique take outside of Korea. He and several other pro gamers, and here is now constructing a command center. One Marine, one Reaper into command center. Quite ballsy indeed, follow that by the Stimpack upgrade. He simply counts on HazuObs not doing any early pressure, or that he'll be able to simply combat that with pure skill and shenanigans. But yes, TLO is nowadays heading a pro gaming house in Stockholm, which is a very interesting endeavor. We'll see what comes out of that, but it is very promising for the future. It helps forward esports and helps make it more accessible to a wider range of fans. And I hope to have him on the show for an interview or a dual commentary quite soon. HazuObs, meanwhile, has placed a proxy pylon here in a fairly hidden location that will enable him to warp in troops as well as, of course, scout TLO's movements, but this may be the precursor to a fairly early aggression push attempt from HazuObs. And now a second barracks before factory comes up for TLO, followed by a third, so a fairly bio-heavy early build, upgrading orbital command on his fresh command center before moving out. And by now HazuObs has 2 warp gates and just put down an expansion, so definitely look like we'll be seeing a longer game. That is, unless HazuObs managed to break TLO's fairly unprotected front. There are no bunkers or anything here, and HazuObs moves up, beautiful Guardian Shield up, slaying one Marauder. Now might be able to take down a tech lab. TLO is pulling probes, pulling SCVs, and he's only got 3 or 4 Marines and a Marauder at that. Will he be able to hold? It seems like HazuObs has been pushed back, but he's pushing back in, and now a force field cutting the forces in half, but one force field in that position doesn't do too much. So mouzHazu is moving out, being content with having scratched the paint on TLO's surface, and held him back from expanding for the time being. Meanwhile, we have 4 barracks up for TLO and another tech lab being constructed. So what will come out of the Wünderboy next, we can only wonder. I just finished upgrading concussive shells with marauders, and by now mouzHazu is definitely ahead in terms of the economy game, having his nexus now constructed well before TLO can utilize his new command center. But he is being very constructive and building SCVs in the new one while he can. But now mouzHazu is again on the ramp of TLO, having already placed 2 beautiful forces that prevents the reinforcements from coming back in, being able to take down marauders and marines. So that's a very cost-efficient exchange for mouzHazu there, pinning TLO back even further. Might lose a sentry there, yeah, that is a small but significant loss. Killing another stalker. The concussive shells, pardon me, he cancelled that upgrade earlier and is only now finishing it actually, so my mistake. Concussive shells is of course a big game changer, especially this early in the game. Let's see who can win this skirmish here. Definitely TLO is out here in the open, and the force fields just cut his forces in half once again. mouzHazu being able to take them apart without TLO being able to deal maximum damage. He's forced to retreat and might even lose another marauder here. So for the time being, the middle and the map control that comes with it belongs to mouzHazu. However, TLO will have something to say about that. He has now established his new expansion, and since he built SCVs from both command centers all time long, he has quite a few workers to immediately transfer over there. Economy wise, TLO is behind still though, 36 SCVs to the 43 probes of mouzHazu, but I should imagine he'll close that gap fairly quickly, now building double refineries. So what do we have in the unit count? 6 stalkers, 2 zealots versus the 6 marauders and 6 marines, and now mouzHazu adding sentries since he lost so many. Meanwhile, nothing further yet in terms of teching from TLO, now taking out that proxy pylon of mouzHazu. mouzHazu by now has of course established quite a few gateways, also one robotic facility that will put his warp gate count to 7 momentarily, and they definitely kicking into Brotoss macro mode. Looks like he's geared to take his 3rd natural here. That is of course always a decision you have to make when playing at Xel'Naga Caverns. Do I go for the gold, which is so risky but so rewarding, or for the fairly safer, though by no means safe, other expansion? mouzHazu will go for the later option, and at least he has given himself the opportunity to do so. TLO is poised to take his gold, which if he can hold it will definitely put him back and ahead in the economy game. Interesting, interesting. Meanwhile, mouzHazu going for a Twilight Council, starting on his upgrades. TLO is now getting ahead with his factory and starport production. He should be wanting to add medivacs to his bio infantry force here, and he will most probably take the gold and fortify his position, because if he can hold it, he is definitely in a very good and comfortable position. Now scanning mouzHazu, see what kind of shenanigans are up here. mouzHazu now going for the ever so important blink upgrade. Here we see blink, of course, making the stalker armor of any Brotoss player so much more versatile. And combined with an observer that can spot high ground and bases and stuff like that, you can blink in and do surgical attacks that can turn the tide of a battle in an instant. Now TLO believes that being offensive is the best way to be defensive, and is moving out with his forces. We now see him going for Hellions here, getting the Infernal Pre-Igniter as well as double upgrades for his infantry. And interestingly, going for an orbital command here at this gold expansion, you almost always see Terran players do a planetary fortress upgrade here because of its immense defensive capability. It's very difficult to kill a planetary fortress, but an orbital command, well, it's quite squishy, even though it of course gives you extra mules. So TLO taking a risk in order to get ahead. You have to do that sometimes. Meanwhile, Hasrob's taking his second natural here, and which is of course a lot less rewarding, these being normal minerals, but more easily defended. However, TLO will make up for the fact that he built an orbital, and the best way he can by building bunkers. I'm sure that will be followed by turrets as soon as the Colossi army of Hasrob starts to thicken. Meanwhile, Hasrob, being no stranger to aggression or expansion, is poisoning himself to take his own gold, and should he be able to hold that, well then TLO must immediately take out one of Hasrob's expansions, because otherwise he'll be so behind. Now going ahead with the infantry upgrades level 2, whereas Hasrob is getting salad leg upgrades. Looking again at the income tab, we see that the harvester count has pretty much balanced each other out, and here we see Hasrob's probing somewhat with his forces. Unit-wise, 4 sentries, 12 stalkers and 18 zealots, with upgrades on the way, versus the 23 marines, 2 hellions and 20 fearsome marauders with 6 medivacs backing them all up. And an observer here, checking out what's happening. More and more barracks are being added. And a second robotics facility for Hasrob's, interestingly, only now completing his robotics bay, so he should be producing colossi in an unfair amount very, very shortly. But by now TLO has had his high yield expansion up for quite a while, which puts him well ahead of Hasrob's in the economy game, and it's now Hasrob's job to do something about all this, because otherwise TLO will definitely be able to out macro him without too much difficulty. Now he's getting his extended thermal lands for his colossi. He don't have any out quite yet, but with double robotic facilities that will soon be amended. And now TLO is getting his ghosts and his cloak. Now, and every time we see TLO go for a ghost academy with ghosts and everything, we wonder, will he be building nukes? He is of course very prone to using nukes in a extrovert fashion, that it's always pleasing the fans, but he's also one of the large pioneers, the finest pioneers of using defensive nukes. Basically, rather than trying to obliterate an opponent's army, you use nukes to defend your own. You force the opponent to move out of position so that you can defend more easily by placing a nuke. And we may see that come into play. TLO now forced to stim his entire forces. Maybe that was not the best idea, but in either case is now attacking the expansion of Hasrob's, but he should probably retreat. This is a Brotoss death ball that should be feared, and losing one medivac and with beautiful force field shutting out the forces of TLO, that it has been a negated attack, and definitely have to consider Hasrob's getting the best deal out of that exchange. TLO losing much precious health on his infantry from overstimming and without taking out any significant structures or units. And here we do see it, ladies and gentlemen, nukes are being built by TLO. No matter how it goes, this will be entertaining, and it could quite possibly win him the game in an extraordinary fashion. We'll just have to see. One nuke is on the way, and we see that he's getting his infantry upgrades up to the very top, and I believe that Hasrob's is somewhat behind in upgrades. He's got 2 armor, but only now getting the attack upgrades, but he's got 4 colossi and a huge Brotoss death ball behind it. This is very fearsome for a Terran player, but he's got ghosts and he's EMPing those colossi, and if he can use a defensive nuke in a proper fashion, this could definitely, then here we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Hasrob's is now unable to move forward. TLO should cancel this nuke rather than losing it. They are quite expensive. He's already building a new one, and it seems like he will allow it to go off. Now, that I do question. Of course, it's always nice to see something blow up, but still, he would have been able to use it more properly at a later fashion when the battle had already been commenced. Now going ahead with getting siege tech and ship levels, so he'll be building Vikings to combat this rising Colossi count. 4 Colossi, 5 tops, that's all you need, otherwise your unit composition gets too lopsided. Now TLO is cancelling the fresh expansion of Hasubs here, but the question is, will his forces be pinned in? This is a Brotoss army that TLO cannot possibly fight. He should load up his army in his medevacs and get the hell out of there. Move, TLO! And it seems like the blink micro of Hasubs will be able to take down all the medevacs and the entire expeditionary force of TLO. Now he did cancel an expansion, but that was a costly loss of units, and here we see TLO being crafty again, attacking with his SCVs. Now why is he doing this, ladies and gentlemen? Well, he feels that by getting rid of SCVs he'll be able to push more attacking units into his total supply count. If he builds sufficient command centers, he can simply mine with only mules. We've seen many Terran players experimenting with this, and it has not yet been perfected, but now we see a defensive nuke again being used to ward off the Brotoss forces, and this time he does cancel it. A good, wise decision there. And now building another Reaper, interestingly, but meanwhile we see Hasubs, who lost this expansion over here in the left side of the map earlier, now establishing a new one, and that is definitely on TLO's turf. TLO has this expansion, so now that his gold is pretty much out, it means that he and Hasubs are even in expansion, so it's all about who can get up the next one and hold it. And here we see Hasubs again clashing into the almost depleted base of TLO now, so this may not be so important to attack into, but what Hasubs is actually doing is that he's enabling a siege of TLO's fresh expansion and also preventing TLO from attacking into this right expansion of Hasubs. So he's defending by attacking. Had this been a planetary fortress though, that this would not have been possible, so I question that decision from TLO. And here we see yet another defensive nuke. Cancel, TLO, cancel. Seems like he might be wanting to go off. This will hurt his own command center. Don't be suicidal. This is not a game for masochists, TLO. And indeed, he allowed that blast to go off while also losing his expansion. This looks very bad for our German Wünderboy, nowadays Stockholm resident. Meanwhile though, TLO managed to take out this building expansion for Hasubs once again, so he's not by any means out of the game. But Hasubs is now up, having this expansion very fresh, up and running, almost saturated. TLO is now sieging this expansion but being cut apart by a Dark Templar, now scanning and killing it. So he's got one siege tank here that will prevent mining for Hasubs for the time being. He will have to dedicate some forces to that. And TLO seems like he's very intent on mining these minerals. Is he aware of this expansion of Hasubs? No, he does not know. He might wrongfully believe that they are even and that this is Hasubs' only mining base. TLO definitely needs to find that out though, so here he runs up, and this is probably a bit of a nasty surprise. This is a very clever, mischievous little trick, sieging with cannons, but here we see a clash once again and a defensive nuke being used very beautifully. Here you see, ladies and gentlemen, this is a superior Brotoss Death Ball, and now with 3-2 upgrades, or upgrading Psystorm and armor shields at the same time. But you see a defensive nuke there managed to move Hasubs out of position, and the TLO is able to actually win this battle. That is only because of the defensive nuke being used so beautifully there. Had they been clashing full on with force fields being placed by Hasubs, that would have obliterated TLO's forces, and he would probably have to GG by now. But now TLO is able to crash into this easternmost expansion of Hasubs, and if he scans, he'll be able to take out this DT before it cuts him into pieces. But it definitely seems like TLO now has the opportunity to claw himself back into this game. He needs to do that desperately. Hasubs knows this, so he will defend it as well as he possibly can. This Dark Templar is causing tremendous amount of damage, and looking at the units tab, we see that Hasubs has got 6 Templars, that with Psystorms, 2 Archons, 15 Stalkers, and this is just bad news for TLO. 3 Colossi at that. Seems like he might be even able to save this Nexus. TLO, this is where the game will be concluded. Ladies and gentlemen, TLO is now desperately trying to cause as much damage as he possibly can. He's targeting the Colossi, but his Marauders gets cut into pieces. He's got Ghost, but now you see what mouzHazu with his superior economy is able to do, just warping in a whole new army of Zealots and Stalkers. It seems like our German Wünderboy might be out of tricks, but he's got one final force of Marauders and SCVs clashing into the Archon, Stalkers and Zealots of mouzHazu, who's warping in Dark Templars, High Templars, whatever kind of Templars you want, and the Side Storms will rain, as well as the Force Fields. TLO, can you do it? Will he be able to snipe this Nexus? If so, he might be able to take it for himself and claw himself back into this game. But mouzHazu has the superior supply route, and TLO is forced to GG. Ladies and gentlemen, here you see that defensive nukes can indeed be a very good thing, but in and by themselves they won't win you the game. mouzHazu won this game because he managed to take a superior economic lead through this ninja nexus that he managed to defend by being offensive in this region, as well as doing many other attacks. Multi-pronged siege with cannons, which of course does not cost you supplies, so it's very cost efficient if you have the resources, and then simply starve TLO out. I wonder, had he placed some of those nukes more differently, had things been different? Nukes, they are a feature of the game that has yet not been fully explored. TLO is one of the pioneers, but you need the solid foundation and the solid economy to win in StarCraft 2, and this was a beautiful testament of that. The German Brotoss player mouzHazu is indeed a fearsome threat to anyone on the ladder. And I hope you enjoyed this broadcast. This has been a G Division StarCraft 2 Coliseum episode with me, Sebastian Sjöberg. If you enjoyed it, feel free to consider subscribing it. There will be another one out tomorrow and another one on the day after that. Thanks so much for watching. GG and out.